Hey y'all, No here. Well, if you're watching this video, you're probably trying to decide which 10 is best for me, the XMID 1 or the XMID 2. And probably like me, you've watched a whole bunch of reviews and videos to try and figure it out. But don't you wish you could just walk into the Durston store and they'd have two tents set up side by side, and you could just crawl up in one and then crawl up in the other, see what it feels like, and then decide. Well, we know we can't do that because there is no Durston store. There's a Durston warehouse out in Arizona, and I think one in Canada, but you can't try them out unless you buy them. And so what I've noticed about most of the reviews and videos is that they talk a lot about materials and durability and condensation and things like that. And all those are things that, are going to play into your decision of which one is the one for you, or if neither one of them is the one for you. But what we're going to be looking at today is the actual footprint of both of them and the actual size of both of them without actually having to buy either one. So just to review, the XMID 1 sells for $269. It weighs 25 ounces, and you have this much space inside the tent to sleep in. Whereas the XMID 2 is $50 more, $319, and it weighs 31 ounces, 6 ounces more, and you have this much more space to sleep in, a total of this much space. And so it almost seems like a no-brainer. Only 6 more ounces of weight, only $50 more in the price to have such a bigger space. But you may want to look at the bigger picture before you decide that this much space is really going to work for you better than this much space, because there's more to it than that. And so what I have done, and you may have already figured this out, on the Durston website, they give you some of the dimensions, in fact, most of the dimensions of the tent itself. And so that's what we're going to go through today, is to actually, I've laid this out, I've taped it off on my living room floor, and as you will see, the footprint of both tents were so large that I could not even fit either footprint of either tent in my living room. So let's take a look at the individual dimensions and the differences between the XMID 1 and the XMID 2, and actually how kind of huge both of them are. So let's take a look at that next. Okay, so here is a view, and what I have done is I have taken both footprints of each tent and overlaid them on top of each other. So the lines that are just ordinary masking tape are the dimensions of the XMID 1. The red tape is the difference between the XMID 1 and the XMID 2. So let's take a little closer look at each dimension one at a time. Most of them are the same. So actually, the length measurements are the same for each tent. So you've probably seen this same type of drawing on the Durston website. And so let's start out with the magic rectangle that Dan Durston's always talk about. That is the first thing you want to do to pitch your tent. So if I can get over here where I get a little bit more perspective of the whole footprint, because as you can see, it is quite large. So the basic rectangle that you stake out first to pitch the tent is going to go from this corner up to this corner, from this corner across to this corner. Now, and that's where I ran out of room, okay, because then we would go from this corner in this direction. But as you can see, I ran completely out of room. I didn't really want to move my couch out of the living room, but that's what it would have taken to tape out the footprint of this entire tent. And so you can see, if we move over here, then this line right here would actually go underneath the couch, and then it would meet up with this line right here from this corner. So that may seem a little bit shocking to you because it doesn't really look all that big in the videos and in the Durston video itself. You really don't have a perspective of just how big these two tents are, at least how big their footprints are, until you actually start laying them out on the floor here. So let's take a look at the length dimensions, which are the same for both tents. So first we're going to look at the overall length dimension. It's going to go from this corner up to this corner, and that's 100 inches. And then you'll also see this dimension, which is the length of each side of the parallelogram, which is the secret geometry to make this thing work. So that dimension of each side of the parallelogram is 106 inches. Same for both tents. And so none of the length dimensions are different for either tent. The dimensions that are different are the width. And so now let's look at the width dimensions. Okay, so here, I can barely back up far enough to see both width dimensions of the rectangle. So here is the width of the XMed 2, and then from this corner over to the red is the XMed 1. Okay, so these lines that are in red are the XMID 2 longer, or dimensions that are bigger in this direction. This line here for the XMID 2 is 106. Same thing for this line on the XMID 1. Okay, so the distance from this corner all the way down to the red corner is 83 inches for the XMID 2, 65 inches for the XMID 1. And then the two other dimensions that are different between the two tents are the distance from here to here. Okay, and that's going to be the perpendicular distance across the two parallel sides of the parallelogram are 33 inches for the XMID 1. And then if we back out a little bit more, and it's going to be 52 inches over to this side of the parallelogram for the XMID 2. So this gives you a pretty good picture of the size and the differences in the size. But I'm going to put my sleeping system inside and let you see it. But really, if you've got the space and you really want to know just how much space or lack of space you're going to have, how big the footprint really is going to be, I highly suggest that you tape off a piece of floor like I've done here. And I'm going to show you the secret to being able to do that in a minute. But now let's take a look at what it actually looks, how much space there actually is inside the sleeping area. Okay, so I'm 5'11", and let me get this over just a little bit closer to the couch. Okay. Okay, so the couch is really representing the inner wall of the inner tent, the mesh wall. And so if I'm all the way up against the side, then I've got about this much space, and that's, I'm going to say, about 8 inches. And so that's not a lot of space, but that gives me a place to put my glasses or headlamp or different things that I might need to get access to during the night. And honestly, this should be enough space to sleep in. It's not going to be enough space to put a backpack in, or shoes, or boots, or clothes, or things like that. But it's giving you some space. Now that is as opposed to, so in the XMID 2, we got all the way over here. So if I didn't want to be all the way up next to the wall of the tent, then perhaps I would come over a little bit more. And that's going to give me this much space. And I would say that's about 18 inches there. But like I said earlier, there's nothing like actually taping it off and seeing what the space actually feels like. It's one thing to look at it on YouTube, but it's a whole different thing when you actually see it in person, lay down in it in person. Actually, night before last, I actually slept inside this little space here, and it was easy to do. I mean, that was enough space for me to sleep in. You know, like I said, it's not enough space to store your gear in, but that's where these huge vestibules come in. So let's take a look at them next. So I'd like to make a little bit of a disclaimer here. These are the accurate measurements from the Durston website. Now, as far as me taping it off on the floor, you can only be so accurate on a carpet floor and with one person trying to tape it down. And I'll give you an example here, okay? So, this length distance here is 100 inches, and this length difference here is 106 inches. And as you can see, I hope you can tell, so this distance looks closer together than it does up here at the other end. And that's purely because, you know, I can only be so accurate. But I was accurate as I could be with, you know, what I was working with. So you've got all the dimensions that you need from the website itself to be able to actually take this thing out on your floor and try it out. Now, I said we're going to take a look at the vestibules. And when you do that, you'll see that, like for the XMed 1, just try to ignore this red line, pretend it's not there. So for the XMed 1, the vestibule is going to go from here all the way down this triangle to the other end, okay? And your trekking pole location is going to be about right here, which is about at a 45-degree angle. You know, you're going to bisect this 90-degree angle here into two 45-degree angles. And so that's the way that your vestibule is going to wrap around. So you're going to have one sidewall tent coming to here, and then the other sidewall, which is going to be the vestibule part of the fly, it's going to go all the way down to there. So you can see your storage space is going to be from right here up to there, actually up to there because we're on the XMed 1. And it's pretty big. I would say, I didn't actually measure it, but so it's about 3 feet from there to there. And of course it tapers down as you get up to the other end. But this should be plenty of space right here to put your backpack and a whole bunch of gear. And then the thing to remember is you're going to have the same thing up at the other end. So you've got this much space on the vestibule on this door, but you got another door over here that's got the same amount of space up the other end. So bunch of space available, you know, outside of the inner tent. And then it's going to be the same exact thing. Vestibule dimensions are going to be exactly the same for the vestibule on the XMed 2. Now, the one dimension that they don't give you on the website, okay, is so we know, straighten that out a little bit. Okay, so I put this dotted line in right here because that is the way that they actually dimension it on the website. So the distance from the outer wall of both tents up to the outer wall at the other end is 106 inches. And they also tell you that the length on this side is 100 inches. But what they don't tell you is what that angle is right there, or what the length of this third side of the triangle is. But we know that this is a 90-degree angle here, so we can use Pythagorean's theorem to calculate the length of this side of the triangle. And so you can either take my word for it or you can calculate it yourself. But rounded off, it's 35 inches from here to here. So knowing that dimension, then that tells you what the angle is going to be on this parallelogram. So you're just going to make your imaginary line up to here, and it should measure 35 inches here to here, 106 inches from there to there, and 100 inches from there to there, making sure that you keep this at a 90-degree angle right there. It'll be the same way for the XMID 1. It'll be 35 inches from there up to here, same exact way. Now, I didn't see any real need, and honestly, that's why I put this door on this side over next to the couch, because if you know what half of the tent is on one side, it's just a mirror image on the other side. And then obviously once you get this angle laid off and this line laid off, then all you got to do is go perpendicular to this line and measure over to there for the XMID 2, perpendicular from this line and measure over. And actually, they're going to be at the same place for both of them. And that's going to tell you where the other side of the parallelogram is going to be. You put this line down through here, which is going to give you your 33 inches across there. And for the XMID 2, it is, 52 inches. So let me walk around this whole thing one more time so you can get those numbers again in case you weren't able to see them. So let's take a look at the dimensions that the website gives us to start with. And so that's going to be 65 inches across the rectangle for the whole footprint for the XMID 1. For the XMID 2, 83 inches from outside corner to outside corner. And then the overall length of the rectangle is going to be the same for the XMID 1 or the XMID 2. And that's going to be 100 inches. And then this diagonal line, which is representing the wall of the inner tent where the door is, it's going to be, hope you can read that with the sun shining on it, 106 inches for both. That is from here to there, okay, all the way to the outside wall, And then, line this up for you again. So the length dimension for each side of the parallelogram, which is going to be from this corner up to that corner, 93 inches. Distance across each sleeping area for the XMID 1, 33 degrees. For the XMID 2, it's going to be 52 degrees. So I hope this helps you. It helped me quite a bit. And honestly, based on what I've seen with the amount of space to sleep in and still having about 18 inches of space, not 18 inches, 8 inches, to put odds and ends stuff while I'm sleeping. But really based on the size of the footprint more than anything else. Because if you look at our main rectangle again, that you're going to stake out when you set up the tent. Okay, so for the XMID 2, from there all the way down to there. Now, that's almost as long as my couch is, as you can see over there. And honestly, I think if I bought the XMID 2, I would have trouble finding a place to set up a tent that would be that big. I mean, that's a lot of space. And I may even have trouble finding a rectangle this size to set up in, because that's 65 inches wide and 100 inches long. That's a pretty big footprint. I've never seen a tent with a footprint that big at all. So I hope that helps you. If you have the space and the time and really want to get an idea of what it really feels like, I highly recommend that you actually take the time to tape it off on a big piece of floor and really see just how big it really is, because it's big. Now, it doesn't tell you how tall it's going to be, and the dimensions I give on without actually building a tent yourself, it's kind of hard to tell. But that's the other thing, is I think that the smaller the tent, the steeper the wall should be. So it may be that you have a little bit more headroom in the XMID 1, or more usable headroom. But I really haven't come up with a good way to figure that out. So that's it for now. Now all I have to decide on is XMID Regular, XMID Solid, or XMID Pro. I think the price is going to make the decision on between XMID Pro and everything else. But I still haven't quite decided about XMID Regular or XMID Solid. The cost may determine that. Oh, and by the way, this is January of 2026. So if you're running into this video years down the road, just be aware that the prices may have changed since 2026 and when you're looking at this now. But this is the price that I got off the website in January 2026. So that's all for now. Hope this helps you out. If it does, leave me a thumbs up. God bless you, each and every one, for watching, and vaya con Dios.